Hey everybody, Kristian here with a donut hole, a mini-sode that I'm titling, What Can We as Mountain Bike Coaches and Instructors Learn from the Greater World of Mountain Guiding? And mountain guiding, centuries old concept here. There's been generations of people that have been certified at the international level to be mountain guides, to take people into the high mountains of the world. And my thought here is that we as mountain bike coaches and instructors are relatively new in this concept, and I think there are some things from that world that we can learn. And so with me today is Josh Whitmore. Josh is the owner of Mountain Bike Skills Factory here in Western North Carolina and a mentor for the global syndicate of mountain bike coaches. We're here today at Rocky Knob actually running a GSMBC tech course. It's been super fun. And Josh has also been a mountain guide. And so, Josh, thanks for joining me today for a short little episode here. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about your mountaineering background?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Kristian. Long-time listener, first-time caller. So, my journey to becoming a mountain bike coach was that I was actually a mountain biker first and raced as a professional cross-country racer, sort of my teenage years and early 20s, and then actually quit for a while, mostly because in the late 90s, doping at the international level was pretty bad, and it was kind of that whole scene I didn't want to be a part of. So I got out of racing and went into outdoor education and mountain guiding. And so with that world, I was an Outward Bound instructor and a Knowles instructor, and did some private guiding as well. Worked a lot of courses in big expedition type of formats. So it would be things like, I worked 3 of the 7 summits, worked a lot in Patagonia and Aconcagua, and would work in Alaska in the North American summer on Denali, and then worked one trip on Kilimanjaro, and then a ton of rock climbing guiding and ice climbing guiding sort of along with that as well, but quite a lot of those like multi-week expedition courses in big mountains.
Right on. And Josh and I met working for the North Carolina Outward Bound School, which at the time was doing mountain bike expeditions, which was really cool. But the kind of the main emphasis here is this question of like, what do mountain guides do at their core besides like the normal kind of view of guiding that we talk about in mountain bike coaching, which is managing your class management or your participant management, addressing and adhering to safety rules, and then choosing appropriate terrain and communicating about it. So those are kind of our three spokes, or the three principles of what mountain bike guides do to keep ourselves safe. But when we zoom out and think about guiding in general, there's a bit more that goes on with that. And where I wanted to, kind of the question I wanted to ask Josh here is like, how do mountain guides really view the whole experience of guiding with the client? Like, what are they trying to do in terms of creating an unforgettable experience? So Josh, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of really natural crossover to, the mountain bike coaching world and mountain bike guiding world. I feel like I learned quite a lot of those skills, in the mountaineering and, kind of world. Just, I think client care is really a high piece of that, is that, you're trying to design and facilitate a day that is a magnificent adventure experience for your clients, right? And so, you're trying to, maybe they're, depending on their goals, like they may be there for some technical instruction for, but they may also are there to be guided, up a peak or something like that. But in both those cases, it's, to be able to design that and facilitate that like adventure experience is really key. And how it translates onto the mountain bike, I feel like, is really similar, is that, if they had an awesome day, then maybe did they learn the exact things they needed to or wanted to, maybe aren't quite as important. But if they, if they had an amazing day in otherwise, then that's, also, a fantastic thing to be able to deliver to them. One of the kind of aspects I think that crosses over quite well is the idea of efficiency. So in the mountaineering world, you're often, there's a lot of technical components there. You're traveling great distances. Like the difference between a guide with a client being able to move through technical terrain and then a newer person conquering that same technical terrain on their own is that the guide can move through that terrain much more quickly, much more efficiently than someone who is less technically adept or efficient at doing that. And so one of the key components of that efficiency in the mountaineering world, rock guiding world, is you're always thinking, it's kind of like a chess game. You're always thinking like 4, 5, 6 steps ahead. And thinking like, okay, well, what I'm doing now, but what am I doing next? And how can I set up what I'm doing now to like facilitate what's happening next more quickly? That might be with technical systems or with your route choice or whatever it is. But so I think like translating that onto the mountain bike is that one easy way that could be an example would be, like, let's say you're, as a coach, you've got a bunch of stuff that you're teaching is really, like if you're doing this trail based and trying to do linear, is trying to be efficient with your terrain and the way that you, can teach things along the way, rather than, and have a fantastic route, rather than like, oh, we're done teaching this. Now we're going to make a long commute over to here to teach this other thing. And then we got to make another long commute to do something else. And it sure does facilitate that efficiency and for the day. If if you're kind of like have stuff to do in along the entire route. So that's one example I can think of.
Yeah. So I think that efficiency piece is really important for us as coaches and guides, because we need to be effective in what we do, and we need to conserve energy while we're doing it so that we can be at our best. And, we never know when there may be something that happens that we need to be riding harder to help out in a certain situation. As you were talking about the mountain guiding world, it made me kind of think about a conversation we had this morning with our participants in our course here, our candidates, process goals versus outcome goals. And in the mountaineering world, there's often an emphasis on an objective. Like, I want to get to the top of Denali, or I want to come to Kilimanjaro. And we can talk about pros and cons of those objectives, but then I'm kind of curious, is from a mountain guiding perspective, like what might you do or kinds of things might you say to highlight the process side of the experience versus the outcome side of the experience?
Yeah, that's tough, especially, the real mountaineering world is very outcome oriented, right? Especially like you think of the Seven Summits crowd, right? That's like, the whole, it's like summit or nothing sort of like mentality a lot of times. And so, it can be tough as a guide to reframe that into, was this, there were things that are outside of our control that kept us from making it to the summit, maybe conditions or weather or whatever it is, right? And then so we didn't achieve that goal of making it to the highest point of the mountain. But did we still have a fantastic experience? What did we experience along the way, and what did we learn from it? Maybe we didn't make it to the top that day, but the mountain will probably be there. We can come back. So as a guide, like, you better be making sure that they're having a fantastic experience along the way, and in case there are those things that are outside of our control that prevent them from reaching their outcome goal. So yeah, that's one way I think about it.
Yeah, good. Early on my Outward Bound career, I was exposed to some awesome mentors, and one of the things that I learned back then, it's taken me a long time to really understand how it works, but this idea of managing your client's expectations, and how we as guides, that's one of our most critical jobs, is managing expectations. Where do you land with that in terms of start with the mountain guiding world, of managing that expectation between like the process goal on one side and that summit on the other?
Yeah, I think I guess the way that I translate that into the mountain bike thing is that we have people that want, maybe they've got a terrain based goal that it's kind of an outcome thing, right? Is they really want to ride this one big feature. And then, they've come to you as a coach to help me ride this thing. And then, throughout that assessment of working with them, you understand that, like, well, we're definitely not going to ride that feature today. There's a lot of, they need a lot of foundation stuff to kind of work toward that. And so, it's kind of like, managing the client expectation is, I feel like, you're helping them to feel successful in the steps that they're making to get towards that goal. So, trying to sell it to them in the way of like, okay, well, we're going to put effort into this foundational things now that are going to help us reach that goal along the way. So, and we're going to look for improvement, in our, whatever we're doing now. Maybe we don't get to that big feature that you really want to ride today or next week, or a month from now, but are we making progress, and judging success off of like the process of staying dedicated to like improvement and practicing and, that sort of process, and, making progress, can be that they judge their success on that, not necessarily like how quickly they make it to the big feature that they want.
Yeah, it sounds like kind of addressing the person holistically. Thinking about that bigger picture beyond just like a lesson or you've been hired for the day to work up to this feature or whatever, but thinking through that. What can I do with them to make them really enjoy this process so they keep coming back and they're motivated? They leave motivated to want to continue this journey. To thinking about like, I didn't reach feature X today, but I now know what I need to do, and I've got a bunch of homework, and I feel really motivated to do that. Maybe I need to get a little bit stronger. Maybe I need to work on my braking a bit more, whatever it is. And I think that's a really wonderful gift that we can give our riders for sure, managing expectations.
Yeah. And kind of bring it back to the efficiency piece. I feel like, part of that as well can be just your own, as a guide, your own level of organization and preparedness. So, like, let's say you got clients that are, they've booked a however many hour lesson, they've paid a lot of money for this thing. And man, it sure sucks if like, I don't know, like they have a mechanical that isn't easily, that you can't fix, or, something ends their day. So, thinking about like, those common scenarios and being able as a mountain biking coach to be able to like just fix it, so whatever it is, like they have some kind of mechanical, like you were telling me a story about your little mini box of like some extra spare bolts that are like common things that like get loose and fall off and things like that, like cleat bolts or something like that you've got a little stash of.
I've got this little lost and found box. It's stuff I've just found on the trail that people have lost. I'm like, well, if people have lost it, maybe I'll carry it with me and maybe I'll get to use it again sometime, like cleat bolts, cotter pins for brakes, rotor bolts, chain links, all sorts of little things. And something I learned from one of my early climbing guide mentors was that what Josh is talking about now is this preparedness of thinking through like what could happen, making sure that I've got more than I need. So I'm often carrying a heavier pack, and it's really well organized. So I know where everything is. I can get to it immediately. I'm carrying a little extra food. Sometimes the weather, I'm checking the weather, but I'm also maybe carrying another little piece of clothing, maybe whether it's a toque or gloves or, something that might help with the client care. So I think, that's something very specific we can take away from this is increasing our awareness of client care as a mountain bike coach, and we're not just a skills teacher.
Yeah.
We're out there trying to create an experience that transcends the 1 or 2 hour lesson.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just sprung into my mind a climbing guide mentor of mine told me once, is like, Josh, you're doing well when the client never has to wait on you to do anything.
Nice.
So, they're working on some task themselves, like, their own self-care task or whatever it is. And then they're done with their task, and suddenly they realize that the ropes are ready to go. And like you've accomplished all of these tasks that they would have been waiting on, but you've done them at the time when they were like doing, something for themselves or something, what I'm saying? Like, it's kind of like you can, So that one way I relate to that on the mountain bike is like the workflow for video analysis is, like I've learned a lot about this of like, working really seamlessly with the GoPro and my phone and my little mini tablet, and like the whole like video analysis thing of like recording and downloading and showing and analyzing. Like, I just want that to be seamless, that they're not waiting on me to like faff around with my equipment, and that it just shows up as a video on my mini tablet, and and we're like drawing on it and making like video analysis and stuff on it, and it just appears in front of them so that means that like while I'm riding uphill to make another lap, I'm like downloading stuff off of the GoPro onto my mini tablet in one hand while I'm riding with my bike with the other hand, like those kinds of things that just like, so it just magically appears when the client is ready.
Yeah.
And I don't never have to be like, hey, wait a minute, let me download this thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like that's a really good example in closing here of how a high-level guide makes the experience about the client. And the high-level guide almost kind of disappears from the situation. And it's all about what the client needs and what they're doing. And like, I love that idea of like, no one ever has to wait on the guide. Not only are the ropes out or whatever, whatever example it is, but like they've already fixed themselves a cup of hot tea, and everything's already ready. And the clients have turned around and you're like, what just happened? They're a magician.
Yeah. Right. Right. They go to have it, take a leak, and they come back and there's tea for them. It's like, right. Wait, what? Like, yeah. When did that happen?
Josh, before we go, you shared with me a donut story once that I think people need to hear.
Yeah, it's a good donut story.
Yeah, it wouldn't be donuts and bikes if we didn't have a good donut story.
Right. Well, as a young cross country racer in the 90s, one of my mentors from the East Coast was Gunnar Sjogren. Gunnar was known as the Beast from the East. One of the first like East Coast cross country racers kind of infiltrate the cross country mountain biking scene, in like the late 80s and in the early 90s, and compete against the pros from Colorado and California and such. Anyway, so I hung out quite a lot with Gunnar, and Gunnar had this donut policy that is, I think, is good for everyone. Is basically he's like, Josh, if you win the bike race, you're allowed to have a donut. If you lose the bike race, you can have two. So that was sage donut advice from the Beast from the East, Gunnar Sjogren.
Josh, thanks. This has been a really, really fun little mini chat here, a little donut hole dive into the world of mountain guiding. So thanks a lot.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah.